Hello everyone and welcome to the table. So today we are checking out a brand new multi-tool here, and this one is coming to us from Bibury. This is their 2052A, and this one's really purpose-built. It says right on the box, this is a rescue tool. And so this may not be something you carry with you in your pocket day by day, but it's definitely something that's worth keeping, say, in your car, just in case, for emergency use. And it still has some fairly useful tools so that if in a pinch you needed it for any other purpose, I think it could still, do the job for you out there. So let's take a look at the tool set that this tool includes here. And the number one are going to be these scissors on here, because if this scissor shape looks familiar to you, this is basically a set of trauma shears. And so trauma shears are, again, very nice. They have these kind of blunted, rounded off tips because they're meant to cut off clothes, basically. In the case of an auto accident, for emergency responders, they get this under your clothing and they cut it off in order to get access to injuries. And so this may or may not fit your use case, but we do have a very nice spring-loaded set of trauma shears right here. And so we can check out how those work.
So pretty thick towel, to be honest. So it's cutting through it pretty easy. So kind of neat. So the spring action makes it easy to maneuver and get it cut.
But it's also coming in this tool size. This is a very small tool. Again, it's meant to be portable, maybe easy to carry or stow away in your vehicle without really taking up too much space. Because let's go ahead and check out the size of this tool when it's closed. So in the closed position right here, we can see it's a little over 3 inches long. So maybe like 3¼ inches long. And it's not really, again, it fills the hand, but it's not overwhelming. In terms of weight, it's not super heavyweight, so let's go ahead and check out the weight of the knife. I think we're a little over 5.4 ounces. And in that 5.4 ounces, we get a pretty good amount of tools, on this multi-tool here from Bibury. So let's go ahead and check out what else we have here. Because of course, the main star is going to be the trauma shears, the scissors that are built into it. But let's check out what else is built into this tool. And so again, kind of lending to its heritage as being, in my opinion, a car-based tool. Right here, you'll notice, open this up, we have a glass breaker. So this is, again, a purpose-built tool. You can see the very sharp tip right there, and that will shatter glass right on impact, again, in the case that you need something so purpose-built. And so it doesn't have a lot of other purpose or utility, but in the case when you do need to break something like the tempered glass on a car window, it might be something you really appreciate having. So having it in your hand, in a grip like this, again, it gives you something to, impact strike on a glass window. So pretty cool. I will mention, of course, all the tools on this multi-tool, these are all slip joint. They are non-locking. So as you're using the tools, you definitely want to be cognizant, be aware of which direction the tool folds in. So just something to think about. We also do have here, let's go ahead and open up this tool. We have the belt cutter. And so again, this is meant to be a seatbelt cutter, but of course you could use this hook here for any number of other applications. You can use it to cut rope, cord, whatever. But again, the idea is you hook this into a seatbelt, you pull, and it slices right through the belt. And I don't have any seatbelts, honestly, to test this on, but we'll go ahead and test it out with some paracord, see how it works, at least on, something that's fairly simple to cut through. And again, a very purpose-built tool is what this is. And looking at what else they crammed in here, let's go ahead and check out right here. So this one's kind of an interesting one. And so I did look at the box to make sure what I was getting here. So again, what this really is, they call this a box opener. And so it's just a tiny little blade on the end of this tool here. It has a working edge, I would say. It's not super razor sharp like an actual knife blade. I'm sure I could add some sharpness to it. But box cutter, orange peeler, something like that. And interesting enough too, this is a file. So I don't know what exactly you would use a file for on a car-based tool or a rescue tool. So drop me a comment below if you think you'd have a use for this. But hey, you do have a functional little nail file right there. and it's kind of a nice fine grit to it. So it is what it is. So interesting little box cutter right here. So we'll definitely test that out on some boxes and see how it cuts through in comparison to the main blade. And speaking of the main blade that we get here with the Bibury, this is going to be an actual, it's kind of an interesting design choice here. So let's go ahead and check it out. So we have a scalpel blade. And so as you can tell, this is again a replaceable scalpel blade right here. So there's no built-in permanent blade on this tool. Scalpel blades are kind of a very good choice for this because again, they're disposable. And if you've never seen how these things change out, you know, they just literally pop right open like that. The blade comes out, you replace it. And these scalpel blades are usually pretty handy when it comes to, you know, breaking down boxes and things of that nature. But these scalpel blades, as expected, are wicked sharp as long as they're brand new. So for something you're using for rescue purposes, this is, you know, it's meant to be a single use item. You use it, you get through the situation you're in, you get home, you replace the blade and give it something fresh for next time. So this may not be something you carry with you every day, but it does guarantee that you have a really sharp, usable blade on hand when you do need one. So there is that. So it's kind of an interesting tool set that we have here. We have a few other little things as well. We do have right here in the handle, we do have the tweezers. So very much like a Swiss Army knife style tweezer set in here. And we also have a little keychain key ring right here built in. So you can definitely hang this from something, put it on your key ring, hang it from something in your car. So it's easy to access and get to, but really a interesting tool set in a small small size for a multi-tool. So again, pretty cool. So interesting design choices again. Like I said, all the tools, they are non-locking, they're slip joint tools. What I would recommend if you purchase this is test and see how tight the action is, because I noticed straight out of the box, the pull to open some of these tools was kind of tough. So these are T8 Torx bits on the pivots up here. So I did have to loosen the pivots a little bit because I was worried, you know, in an emergency, like let's say you need to open this tool right here. This is the blade. And if you're in a hurry, like, and you're not coordinated exactly, you're in an emergency situation, you need this sharp blade out now, you know, you would easily risk, turning your fingernail backwards trying to get this thing out because it was fairly tight from the factory. And I'm sure it'll wear in with time, but for an emergency use tool, it may never wear in because you're only going to use it when you really need it. So I would recommend you test it out, loosen the pivot here if you have to, just to get that action a little bit more friendly. And being the fact that these are slip joint tools, look at the thinness of the blade. So closing the blade is a little bit, it's a little painful because you're pressing into that very thin piece of metal. So it's not impossible, but using the scalpel blade is kind of a comfort issue, in my opinion. Most of the other tools were pretty easy to open, so no real issues with those ones. It was really just the scalpel blade that, in my opinion, was a bit too tight, especially for something so sharp where you want to have a really sure grip on it. So your mileage may vary as you purchase this. Now, when you buy it, it comes in the box right here. We do get a couple of extra scalpel blades in here, but there was no sheath included. It would be really nice to see them include a sheath. And at the price point, I suppose I can't complain. Because again, guys, this is costing less than 20 bucks. Less than 20 bucks for this tool. And I think it's well worth it at that price. But it would be awesome to get something, even just a dinky little nylon sheath. This one came from another knife, but something that you can just, stick this in here. And this isn't even a great fit because it's not designed for this one. But you can see this is all it takes. You put it in a little sheath. And then when this is being stored in your car, you don't have to worry about a bunch of gunk and grime and dust getting into the action of your tool. So something like this would be kind of cool, relatively cheap to implement, so I think that would be a recommendation for Bibury. Include a sheath if you possibly can. Doesn't have to be fancy at all, just something functional to keep it clean, really. But in terms of the size, again, this is a small, a little over 3 inches long. I mean, here it is next to a Leatherman Bond. And the Leatherman Bond is not even a large multi-tool in its own right, but it's bigger than this one. But also, here's a Leatherman Micra. So here it is next to the Micra, so it's kind of in that middle ground. So again, it's not going to be quite keychain carry with that size and the thickness and the weight. but it's still small. So you can definitely tuck this away, you know, maybe in the side panel of your car door. I think that's where I'm going to keep mine, just so it's always handy, because you never know when you might need a sharp blade, when you might need that pair of scissors. Because again, even if you don't use them as trauma shears necessarily, they're still a sharp pair of scissors. Very nicely done. You can see the little micro serrations there on the blade. So action feels nice and tight. Spring loaded. You can see the spring action right there. So pretty well made and well done, in my opinion. And again, at the price, guys, less than 20 bucks. You know, you can't really go wrong with this. And I also noticed they have another variant of this exact tool, but instead of the trauma shears, you get the traditional pliers on the main tool, which is actually kind of a cool concept as well. You get pliers, you get an actual pocket clip, unlike this one. So it's definitely more everyday carry focused, whereas this one is definitely meant to be that rescue tool that you carry with you. So it's cool to see Bibury coming out with a lot of these things. And they're, at this point, a really good option for those budget conscious individuals who want just a functional basic tool. And yes, I will say, of course, obviously these are all made in
China.
So just be aware of that. Nothing wrong with that, of course, especially given the pretty affordable price. So I think if you have any questions or comments, drop those below. Let me know what you think about the Bibury. This is the 2052A. So hope you all have a nice day out there, and I'll see you later.